Hello and welcome. If you're just joining, thank you for joining our presentation on suicide prevention for parents. We're going to wait a minute to get some participants here and then we'll get started. All right, I see we have some participants, so I'll go ahead and start the webinar. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Catherine Buchan. I'm a school counselor at Buljan Middle School. We're going to have the rest of our panel introduce themselves. Grace.
Hi, my name is Grace Gose, and I am one of the school counselors at Cooley Middle School. I am the school counselor for 6th grade students with the last names A through L and all 8th grade students.
My name is Teresa Wilson, and I am the 6th grade counselor at Ike Middle School.
Good evening. My name is Meg Murray, and I'm the 7th grade counselor at Chilton Middle School. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for introducing yourselves. We have a great middle school counseling team. So we're just going to get started here. Before we get started, let me mention that if you have questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat, and then we will answer them at the end of the presentation. So just to pause before we begin, suicide can be a challenging topic for everyone. It's a serious topic and it is something we need to talk about. But please know, please take a break if needed. We are recording this session and we'll be messaging it out to parents at a later date. It's always important to know help is always available. There are multiple crisis response numbers. So there's a suicide prevention lifeline and also the text line. And I'm also going to mention that in July, there's a new national suicide prevention lifeline number, and it's much easier. It's 988. So please take note of that and spread the word. All right, so why are we teaching suicide awareness and prevention in school? Well, one, it's really important and necessary for the health and wellness of our middle school population to receive suicide prevention education. We've seen an increase in suicidal thoughts and behaviors in our children and teens, and it's something that's been in the media and talked about. So thoughts of suicide start with our children and teens can include like unverbalized and verbalized statements, like not feeling like they want to live or they'd be better off without me. Those thoughts can often stem from like extreme emotional pain and feelings of hopelessness, but it also doesn't mean that the student necessarily wants to die. They want that emotional pain to stop, and that's why it's so important that we do this suicide awareness and prevention in school so that our students know how to help themselves and they know how to help others as well. It is also the state law that we provide suicide prevention curriculum in the classroom and that we have policies that deal with prevention, intervention, and postvention. So we're going to cover a few things today in this session. We're going to cover youth suicide prevention basics. We're going to go over the acronym that we teach our students, ACT, Acknowledge, Care, and Tell. We're going to cover what to do when your child acts or practices acknowledge, caring, and telling. We're going to talk about building coping skills, and then we'll provide resources, and then we'll have a time to answer any of those questions that are put in the chat.
Okay, so why does suicide happen, right? Essentially, it's trying to stop intense emotional pain. And some of the things that contribute to that are represented here in this sort of Rubik's Cube visual, just to show that it's a very complex issue, right? So some of those things are, isolating or withdrawing or loss of hope. One of those things is also untreated depression. So the majority of people who do die by suicide have a mental health disorder. Most commonly, it is depression, but these mental health conditions are treatable, and many kids struggle without getting help. So when depression goes untreated, a young person may begin to feel so hopeless that they start to then consider suicide. Drinking and drug use is another big one. So many young people who struggle with depression also struggle with coping with alcohol and or drugs. It's important to talk to your child about the dangers of using substance to cope with negative emotions. And if you are aware that your child is using substances, it's important to seek support. One of the people you can turn to right off the bat is the school counselor at your student's middle school. Another big one is access to guns. So suicide crises are often short term, but having access to a gun makes it easier to carry out that act in an instant. So if you do decide to keep guns in the home, please make sure that they're locked up, unloaded, and it's best to store ammunition and the weapon separately. And then last but not least, thoughts of suicide, right? So when someone has thoughts of suicide, it doesn't necessarily mean that they want to die. Instead, the person is just trying to solve the problem of that intense emotional pain or hopelessness. And so, like I said, people generally don't want to die. They just want the pain to stop. And how can we prevent suicide? So you play an important role in keeping our young people safe, just as your students do. And this Rubik's Cube visual is sort of a visual capture of the things that we can do to help. So there's many ways that we can intervene before someone reaches the point of considering suicide. When young people get treatment for depression or substance use, they can begin to feel much better. Also building that connection between peers or building that connection to trusted adults. Using healthy coping skills. Those are all things that can help buffer young people during difficult times. And your child also has an important role in suicide prevention, right? So this is why we teach the SOS curriculum to all of our students. And like Catherine mentioned earlier, this is what we teach our students, right? So we teach them that if they're seeing signs of suicide in their friends, they learn how to act, and ACT stands for acknowledge, care, and tell. So the first thing is to acknowledge, and that just means to acknowledge the warning signs. So most people do actually give clues that they're thinking about suicide, and some of those things include the things you see here. So for example, if their friend, or if they notice that a friend has a lot more anger that's uncharacteristic of that person, maybe they notice big changes in behavior. Maybe they notice their friend, isn't playing sports anymore, is not hanging out like they used to. If they notice hopelessness, a change in sleeping patterns, either more or less, drinking or drug use in their friends, overwhelming pain, or obviously talking about suicide as well. So these are just signs that we teach our students to identify through videos and discussions in the SOS curriculum that we do. And it's important for you guys to know the signs that we teach our students as well. The next step is to show you care. So students learn about the power of listening to their friends and showing them that they care. So within the videos and the curriculum, there's tons of role play scenarios where it's actually showing real kids, showing their friends that they care. It's important that they practice active listening. We give them phrases that they can share with their friends if they're concerned, to let them know that they care. And some of those phrases are reflected here. So, it's okay to feel that way. Tell me more about it. I'm here for you. Let's go talk to an adult together. If you're too afraid, we'll go together. So just practicing those scenarios of how they can show their friends that they care when they acknowledge that there's some warning signs. And this step is probably the most important. So the T in the ACT model stands for tell a trusted adult. SOS encourages students to reach out and tell a trusted adult. And within the curriculum, we actually have students identify trusted adults that they have on campus at their middle schools and also outside of school. So it's important that, if they're worried about a friend, they know that they need to tell a trusted adult. We also emphasize that it's important that they don't promise to keep something like that a secret. And then lastly, we remind them that it's worth making a friend mad at you if you are trying to save a life. So, an example of a way that they can sort of start that conversation is just, Mom and Dad, I need to tell you something. I'm getting worried about so-and-so. This is what I've noticed. This is what we learned in school, and things like that. So again, ACT stands for acknowledge, care, and tell. And that's just a little bit about what we teach your students with this curriculum.
So after your students receive the SOS curriculum, they are going to be looking out for their peers, and they may come to you with some concerns. As a trusted adult, they may want to talk to you about themselves, or they may want to talk to you about a friend. So here are a couple tips to help with that conversation. Make sure that you listen to your child's concern and encourage them to seek help. Contact their friends' parents directly and share the concerns that you've been given. If you know the family, you can reach out to them directly. You can also contact us here at school. You can reach out to the school counselor or an administrator so that we can get support to the child and family. And of course, if there is an immediate safety concern, you would want to call 111 and report the information that your child has shared with you. And make sure that you reassure your child that they did the right thing by telling you. Oftentimes, they are very nervous to share this information. Oftentimes, kids will say, don't tell anyone. They don't want, maybe they're not quite ready for adults to intervene, but reassure them that working together can help save a life, and they did the right thing by talking to a trusted adult. And just remember, there's always help available. If you are concerned about your own child, you can talk to their pediatrician. You can contact their school counselor. And for any immediate concerns, you can call 911 or you can call 988, the new suicide prevention line. There's also a text line there. You can text ACT to 741-741 to speak to a crisis counselor. Okay, so this is not an easy conversation to have with your child. If they bring this to you, it's not easy for you or for them. So we want to share some tips to help get you through it. Remind yourself it's okay to be a human. It is not expected that you're going to know exactly what to say in the moment. It can be quite a surprise and quite overwhelming, and it's okay to feel uncomfortable with the topic of suicide. Make sure that you are supporting yourself with maybe your own support person, talking to someone before and debriefing after to help you process the emotions that you may be feeling. And remember, most importantly, not to keep the information a secret. If you become aware that a young person may be experiencing suicidal thoughts, we want to get them help right away. One of the ways that we can help students is to build what's called protective factors. We've learned a bit about what the risk factors of suicide are, and now we want to talk about what every child needs to help keep them safe. So we want to encourage our students to be connected at school, whether that is participating in a sport, a band, a club, play, any type of activity that can get them connected to other students and trusted adults. We want them to participate and build those strong connections at their school. And let your child know that you're always ready to listen. You are a strong protective factor for your child, letting them know that you are a safe, trusted adult. So whether they're concerned about a friend who's struggling or maybe themselves, reminding them that they don't need to be worried alone. In addition to being a support for them, we want to help them build the tools to cope with life's difficult situations. As we know, there are times when things are difficult. So here are some healthy coping skills you can encourage your child to participate in. You can do them yourself and you can do them together. Exercise is a great way to get some healthy chemicals going in the brain. Encourage your student to write down what they're grateful for, make a gratitude list, or talk about it around the dinner table, talk about what went well that day or what you appreciate. Have them talk to friends and family often, make sure they're not isolating. They could always listen to music and find lots of activities like that. And your teen may have other favorite coping skills. A lot of our students share that they like to read, play sports, and go on walks, all sorts of things. So everyone's different. As long as they have a healthy coping skill that helps get them through difficult times, we want that for all of our students. So we encourage you after today's lesson about the signs of suicide to take some time to start a conversation with your family about mental health. This can be tough since often we don't usually talk about mental health like physical health. It's quite easy to talk about having a cold or having a muscle pain, but it's a little more difficult to talk about that mental health. But feelings of depression and anxiety are often hidden because youth are confused, embarrassed, or ashamed. So we want to make sure your child knows they can talk to you about mental health and normalize that conversation so that if they ever experience those feelings, they know it's okay to talk about it. Some ways that you can start that conversation are open-ended questions. Let your child steer the conversation to what they want to talk about. Don't rush to solve their problems. I know as parents, sometimes we want to fix it real quick and make them feel better, but instead ask them what they think would help in a situation and let them talk through it and express themselves fully before you start to look for solutions. And then be available and make sure your child knows it. Oftentimes it takes a reminder, like I'm around if you ever want to talk later, and just giving them those frequent reminders that you are there and available so that they know anytime that they can come to you with concerns. And we want to make sure as parents, we know that asking about suicide does not make someone suicidal. It does not put suicidal thoughts into someone's head. That's a myth, and we want to make sure we debunk that. It is okay to ask about suicide. You can ask in an indirect way or a more direct way. There's some examples on the screen. For an indirect, you could say, do you wish you could go to sleep and not wake up? Do you wish you were dead? And then a direct question would be more like, have you thought about killing yourself, or have you had thoughts about suicide? And opening up that conversation, while difficult, if you're seeing signs and you're concerned, opening that conversation can be life-saving for your child or for their friend, because it just normalizes the conversation and allows them to speak up and express what's going on. So there's a couple different ways you can approach it. And so hopefully that's helpful, the different conversation starters.
Now I'm going to talk about some tips for getting teens to talk. It's always helpful. These are for you and also for any friends that you have with teenagers. So number one, teen-led family meetings, where your teen sets the agenda. Playing a game. It's kind of a way to be a little bit distracted and make the teen more comfortable talking about a difficult topic. Another good way is if the subject comes up in a movie or a TV show. There are a lot more shows these days that talk about mental health issues. Going out for a walk, that kind of relaxed atmosphere makes it easier for some teens to open up. Also taking a drive, you're sitting side by side. You don't have direct eye contact. And a lot of parents know that driving in the car is a great way to get your teen to talk about things. Continuing the conversation, or maybe you want to have several mini conversations on a regular basis instead of one big talk. Another way to get teens to talk is to enlist another trusted adult. Maybe they are close to an aunt or an uncle or a grandparent, and they can break through when the teen isn't comfortable talking to mom or dad. So some action steps. Look out for warning signs and seek help immediately. Help build coping skills and positive supports for your child. And talk to your child about suicide and be ready to listen when your child acts. Together, we can make a difference with teen suicide. Suicide is the second leading cause of death for teenagers in the United States. And there is an SOS parent page, sossignsofsuicide.org/parent. On this site, you can view clips of program videos to learn more about the program that your child is receiving. If you are concerned about your child, you can also take an anonymous screening indicating whether it's likely that your child's struggling with depression. So act for parents. It's important to act if your child is showing any concerning signs. A stands for acknowledge that you're seeing signs of suicide in your child. These can be major changes in behavior, sounding very down or helpless, talking about suicide itself, sleeping more or less than is usual, and increased anger, agitation, and also withdrawal from family or friends. Showing your child that you care. You can do that by being a good listener, letting them know this okay to feel how they feel, that you're there to talk to them when needed, and that there is help available. Also, you can tell a professional if you're having concerns about your child, reach out. You can talk to their pediatrician. You can always talk to their school counselor. Most people who are thinking about suicide are struggling with a mental health condition like depression. And with help, people can begin to feel much better. You can also call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, or text that lifeline. If you're worried about your child's safety in the immediate time, you can call 911. Thank you very much for attending, and together we can ensure that every student has a trusted adult to turn to, and we appreciate your support of youth suicide prevention in our school and community.
At this time, we'll take any questions. You can put it in the chat, and then we do have a few people that have submitted some questions, so we'll answer those as well. Take a minute to see if we have anything in the chat. I'll also mention we will be sending out this recording through email. We'll also be sending out linked resources. We'll be sending out that nice little infographic you saw on the previous slide. So you'll be getting all of these resources in an email shortly. All right. Do any of our counselors prefer to answer any of the questions that are posted in the forum, or should I go ahead?
If you want to go ahead and just read the questions out loud, and then we can sort of all hop around and answer. I think that
sounds good.
Great. All right, our first question. What is the district doing across all schools to support the increased emotional needs of our youth? And then the more specifying question was, are they spending more funding to hire more counselors or teacher training? I will say we've got great news at all our middle schools. We are up to 3 counselors at each site. We are in the process of hiring a few to meet that 3, especially here at Boljon. So yeah, and then as counselors, we provide some staff training. So we'll be providing training to staff about suicide prevention as well. If anybody else wants to jump in.
Yeah, another thing our district does is it adopted the second step curriculum across all middle schools. I can't speak for elementary, but I want to say there's something in place there. But at least in the middle schools, all of the middle schools deliver the second step. It's like an SEL curriculum to all the students. So if you have more questions about that, you can reach out to that coordinator and or the school counselor at your student's school. But all the students get developmentally appropriate, grade level specific SEL lessons or social emotional lessons throughout the year. And it's a very robust curriculum. You can find more information about it online, or like I said, reaching out to the second step coordinator and or the school counselor at your student's school. But every student receives that curriculum in our middle schools.
Thank you, Grace. And then to add on to that question, there was a question of what is our district doing to support LGBTQ students? And I can speak here at Boljon. We do have an allies club that is our LGBTQ support club, and anybody else who wants to support them. It's quite an active club. Then we also provide training to our staff. And then we always make it known to all students that anybody is welcome to come visit the counselor, and our counselors are very well educated in that area as well. Do any other counselors have any other thoughts on how we're supporting our LGBTQ students?
Yeah, here at Cooley, I run our QSA club. So that is primarily a student-led club. I offer that for 7th grade and for 8th grade this year. They get to decide sort of what that club looks like. So some of them like it to be a more social club where they just can hang out and feel safe and eat lunch and meet new people. That's open to anyone. All are welcome. And then for 8th grade, they want to be a little bit more proactive in the sense that they, want to do more campaigns. They want to learn more. They want to have guest speakers, things like that. So I try to let the students in that grade level drive that club. And then I'm the facilitator for that over at Cooley. Another thing that I have done personally was a couple years ago, we had a district training and staff members could presented that, and myself and another teacher at Cooley who's no longer at Cooley, but him and I presented on sort of like how to run GSAs in your school, how to support your LGBTQ plus students, and so that was offered to anyone in the district who wanted to come and learn more. So yeah, all of us do a really good job about educating our staff, engaging with our families, engaging with our students, and just making sure that we are sort of in the know of how to support our kiddos.
Thank you, Grace. Meg, did you want to comment?
Sure. And I'll just add that at Chilton, we also have an Allies Club for our students. It's a great, safe environment for students to come and feel supported and make new friends. And then as a tier 1 intervention, we do have some high expectations for a respectful campus. And that includes that all of our students feel included, whatever background or any population that they are, LGBTQ included. So we try to keep a good pulse on that. And anytime a student is feeling excluded or experiencing any negativity, we have a very open door policy to speak to counselors and admin and to make sure that we're all treating each other with respect. So there's always a solid follow through if there's any challenges there.
Thank you. And then our last question pertains to bullying. I'll say across our sites, we all work really hard to make sure we have safe and supportive campuses that are respectful and kind. Here at Buljan, our expectations are be safe, accountable, respectful, and kind. So if there are concerns about bullying or people making comments to other students, we do have a report line that people can fill out an incident report, and it is investigated by administrators. And then we also just work really hard at that school level to make sure that we're creating a campus culture that is kind and respectful. So we have lessons about bullying. Counselors go into the classroom and talk about bullying and empathy and what to do and how to respond to it as well. Anybody else wants to jump in? I know it's pretty similar across all sites in regards to bullying.
Yeah, I'll just say at Ike that we're very responsive, the administration, as well as the counseling staff and teachers. I get emails of concern from sometimes teachers, sometimes parents, and we nip it right in the bud. And a lot of emphasis, as Catherine said, on a respectful, kind environment. And we do restorative practices. So students who may have bullied somebody, they also see the counselor and we talk it out so that it doesn't happen again and the students can always come to us.
Thank you for that. That comes to the end of our questions. We really appreciate you joining us. As always, if you have any concerns about or questions about suicide prevention, about the curriculum we'll be teaching in classes to our students, about bullying, really about anything, send us an email. We're more than happy and we'll be very responsive.